Did you know that CNET has over 30 years of program archives available to the public? For a requested donation of $20, you can receive a DVD or digital copy of any program in our library going back to 1988. The CNET archives include high school graduations and award nights, school district concerts and sporting events, School Library Write and Illustrate Your Own Book Awards, Memorial Day in Boalsburg and the Central Pennsylvania Festival of the Arts, military history lectures, Civil War roundtables, and many more. And don't forget about the meetings. We have an expansive archive of local government as well as Bellefonte and State College area school board meetings. CNET has been covering the Center County community for over 3 decades, and we have the tape to prove it. Visit cnet1.org to browse our archives, and you can call or email us to order your own DVD or digital copy today. Nothing good on TV? You're just not watching the right channels.
Are you looking to stay active and healthy in the comfort of your own home? CNET has a variety of exercise programs designed to help you stay fit and increase strength and flexibility. Strength training, moving freely, and zesty chair exercises all work on improving flexibility, ease of movement, and core body strength. Gentle Yoga is a specifically designed yoga program that is easy on the joints and easy for beginners. Chair Yoga has been created for those with limited mobility. CNET's exercise programs air several times each week on Channel 98 CETV. For specific airing times, please visit cnet1.org and click on CNET Schedules, or call CNET at 814-238-5031. Nothing good on TV? You're just not watching the right channels.
You're watching CNET, Center County's Government and Educational Access Network.
Call the Bellefonte Borough Council work session to order. Welcome. Comments, opening remarks. Welcome everybody to the Bellefonte Borough Council work session. No action or discussion.
No action or discussion will take place during the work session. Trivia question by Council Vice President Barbara Dan.
Thank you. Since we have Valentine's Day coming up, I found some very interesting trivia questions. So these are pretty quick. The first one, in the Victorian era, mean-spirited Valentine's Day cards were called blank Valentines.
Blank what?
Valentines. Mean-spirited Valentine's Day cards.
My brother had a whole bunch of them. I just saw them.
They are called, does anybody want to guess? No? Joanne, I'm surprised. I thought maybe you would have had something. They're called vinegar Valentines. And I'll just do one more quick one, because I did like these. So what major invention was patented on Valentine's Day? That's a good guess, but no.
Heart monitor.
Nope. Any other guesses? The telephone.
Oh,
Thanks for playing.
thank you, Barbara. Items for discussion. First one being the CATA letters from December 21st and February 1st that we all received and have had an opportunity to read. So that is now open for discussion. We have to hold this discussion. Unfortunately, I may have to stop it because we only have so much time before the regular business meeting, so just keep that in mind.
I just want to mention we have some representatives from CATA here with us. If there would be some questions from council to them. They do have to leave a little bit early to get over to Spring Township.
Questions for the representatives? Go ahead, Joanne.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. At the public hearing last week, I asked about fair changes, and I want to know what is the possibility of changing the fare structure from everyone paying a current flat fee to a zoned fee system like SEPTA has and WMATA do. So, for example, a Zone 1 fare within State College or Harris Township or Bellefonte would be at the lowest rate with like a 1 mile wiggle room for State College that could include, I believe, Wegmans, which is in Patton Township. Here in Bellefonte, that could include both Weiss Market and Spring Township and maybe Giant in Benner Township. That would be very critical for us because we have no grocery stores at all in Bellefonte. Zone 2, for example, could go between State College and Lamont or Boalsburg and State College or Bellefonte and Pleasant Gap. Zone 3, which would be 3 community jurisdictions, could go between Boalsburg through State College to University Park Airport in Benner Township, or if you're using Bellefonte, going from Bellefonte to the airport, going through Spring Township on the way to the airport.
Thank you. Excuse me. It's my understanding historically, CATA has looked at kind of zone or multi-fare systems, but the consensus was the service area here is just not large enough to justify that. Because then when you have distance-based fares, the fare system becomes much more complex, more costly to operate, more confusing to passengers. So we could certainly look at that option. It's not something we could do quickly. It would require us to do an internal analysis, and then we'd have to have another public hearing because that would essentially be a change to our fares. But it is something that we could look at into the future. One of the things to keep in mind, as I'm sure I don't have to explain to you folks, is that we do need to consider equity concerns when we're considering fares for our services. Like, we couldn't raise fares for CATA go in one area and not in another area. We'd have to do this system-wide in terms of equity, but that is something that we could look into in the future.
That's why I suggested it to be the entire system and not just for the contracted municipalities.
Sure. We actually we've talked a little bit about it, particularly as the CATA Go service it matures and we're getting a sense of where passengers are traveling. We've tried to design the system so that you pay once and you have access to the full system for passenger convenience. As we get a little bit larger, that may not be practical, so that is something we'll look into.
Okay. And then the second question I have is that there are several federal and state funds available for what is called transportation connectivity that transit authorities can tap into. The two that I found in doing my research was a federal Rural Transportation Assistance Program and the federal RAISE program. Have you looked into any of these and what is the possibility of CATA gathering? I know the municipality can work on this, but CATA also has some possibilities.
Sure. The RTAP program we're aware of, and we're fully leveraging that to the extent that we can. And the second one, we're actually putting together a grant right now for the RAISE program is mainly aimed at infrastructure, and we're actually looking at conducting an assessment of the accessibility of our bus stops system-wide. That's what we're trying to aim for the RAISE grant. The RAISE program is a competitive program, so you have to put together, what you'd like to achieve and what it would cost, and you have to compete with other transit systems around the country. But we are trying to leverage both of those to the extent we can, and we love any suggestions of more money that you think we might be able to leverage.
Dave, I have a question. You're well aware that it looks like Spring Township, at least to this point, they're out of the program. They've already informed you of that. And now, whether they change their mind or not, of course, Bellefonte's surrounded by Spring Township. If Bellefonte Borough stays in the program, and with Geisinger moving to Spring Township, the Weiss store in Spring Township, where would, in the meetings, it's been brought up, that the route would stop at the Borough line. I just wanted to verify that in this meeting.
That would be the case. I can't speak for Spring Township. They're meeting at 7 o'clock, which is, my apologies, why I have to run up there. Whether they stay in or not, we don't know. We are confident that we can construct a service plan with you folks and hopefully with Benner. I believe they've not indicated they're interested in leaving the program. So our optimistic hope is that you folks will stay in and Benner will stay in.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Since, just like I said in front of what Don is saying, is we have medical services and food services are not available here in Borough. Would we be able to have CATA go to those nearby services so that we can continue to have access for our citizens here in Bellefonte?
We couldn't transport people into Spring Township. We could transport people here in the borough and to Benner Township, but as a public authority, for us to operate transit services in a jurisdiction, we have to have a contract with that jurisdiction. Across the way, back in the State College area, we're chartered by the 5 municipalities over there, so we're legally allowed to operate in that area. Any operations we have outside of that require a contract with the municipality where we're operating. So we can only operate where we have a contract.
So to be very concrete, does that mean someone here in Bellefonte could get CATA to go to the grocery store but not be able to get it back?
No.
Okay, Dave, so what you're saying is, if Spring Township's out, Bellefonte Borough residents can't get on a CATA vehicle and take it into Spring Township because they're not contracted?
That's correct.
Okay, simple enough. I mean, everybody understands that those are articles that are within your operating, I
Right.
don't know what the word is, but I mean, that's not you saying that. That's, CATA was originated under these articles that say, hey, if we're going to operate in a jurisdiction or a township or borough, we have to have a contract with them. So if Spring Township gets out, for example, the Y store's out, that's not in the borough or whatever. Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
We're governed by state regulations relating to public authorities. So for us to operate those areas, we have to have a contract.
Thank you.
So, of course, there's a new store, a Giant store in Benner. You could go there if Benner stays in, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right.
And we could also, worst case scenario, if Benner would decide not to be part of the program, we could transport folks in Bellefonte and then from Bellefonte into College Township. So that's a possibility as well.
Okay, I was thinking something, could we get a menu of what's possible? I know I'm not trying to be funny here, but CATA goes around as like an Uber service, but if somebody we wanted to direct someone or have a system where we could get someone from Bellefonte in towards the university somewhere, maybe College Township, could we parcel that in with CATA somehow, or could we talk about maybe a different setup than we have currently?
Sure. I think, yeah, pretty flexible. The point of getting up to the mall is that then you access the full system.
Yeah.
So you have access to the fixed route system. You can also travel into the hospital. And we are establishing a transfer point for people who would want to go on to the university, because we have a number of commuters now that travel from this area over to the university. So they have been unplanned by us. They've been using the hospital as a transfer point to get the university shuttle. Mm-hmm. The hospital has notified us that that's gotten out of hand. Okay. So we're moving that transfer point to another location, but we'll still be able to take folks to where they can transfer to the shuttle right near the Penn Stater and then get onto campus from there. So that access will be preserved. Even if Spring and Benner left, you could still do that.
Excellent. Thanks.
Other discussions or questions? Go ahead, Mr. Brackbill.
In the same tone as we're at right now, why can't you do that in Spring Township? If you can go, if Benner drops out and we can go through Benner, why can't we take people down to Weiss and those places? I don't understand the guidelines of that.
It's the law in which we have to follow is that we can only operate public transit services in areas where we have a contract with that municipality to operate there.
Okay, so if Benner drops, that cuts Bellefonte off.
It would, yes, it would cut Bellefonte off in terms of the immediate surroundings, but we can travel through those areas We just can't make pickups and drop-offs in those areas. So we could go from here up to the Nittany Mall to connect to the broader service and access to everything that's up there.
And then, so once they get to the Nittany Mall, how do they disperse from there to go to where they're going? Do they have to take 2 more stops, 1 more stop, 4 more stops?
It depends where they're going, but they would have access to the College Connector fixed route, and that would take them into the State College area, and they connect to the whole network.
I also want to state that I did not care for Mark's letter. I'm not sure where he's coming from, because we have never been approached about any costs through the years that we've been with CATA that we were underpaying. We provided what we were asked to provide. And now we're looking at a $222,000 payback? Yes, yes, just say yes.
Well, it depends on the level of service that you want to pay for. The problem that we've had is that the services have run at a deficit pretty much since inception.
Whose fault is that? Because CATA never came and asked us. They never brought this forward until just recently.
I don't know how negotiations were conducted in the past. I do know that last year CATA had requested additional funds, and those funds weren't paid by the borough or the municipalities out here, and they were actually paid for by the municipalities in the center region. We're required to have an increase in what we call matching funds, which is the bare minimum we have to give locally in order to get access to the state and federal funds. And there was a required increase for that last year that, according to what I have been told in our documents, was not agreed to. So the only way we could continue to get the matching funds or the state and federal funds was to have that paid for by the borough and by the municipalities in the center region. So this is not a new problem. I don't know how we've negotiated with you in the past. I'm trying to be as forthright and open as I can now.
And my other comment would be that the options that we have right now, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, will not work for Bellefonte residents, because they travel to various places up towards State College, between State College and Bellefonte. It's not fair to those residents to have to try to maneuver how they get there.
I would tend to agree with you. The reason we suggested those 2 options was, given the amount of money that has been offered by the municipalities, that's what we could afford to provide. That's how many hours of service that would buy. And the intent of our public hearing last week was to present that to the public, as we're required to do under law, to see what the public feedback was, and it was not supportive.
And then maybe 5 years ago, we had a big to-do at the YMCA and had people all worked up because you canceled the 2 largest buses that were going through our area. You know, again, that came from CATA, and that's all we got was, you know, listening to the residents and understanding what they're going through. Which, you know, when I first went there, I don't ride the bus, but I saw a lot of people who need that service. But, you know, I think at this point for us, and my feeling is, for that amount of money, we don't have that to just pull out and say, here you go, enjoy. It won't work that way.
Well, from a contractual standpoint, kind of where we are right now, there's no change that would be to the services until June 30th. The question on the table now is, what do we do after June 30th for July 1st? We can't continue to run a deficit next year, so that's what we're talking about now. What can we provide with the amount of money that's going to be available? And we'll have to take a look at, hopefully you folks will be staying in, whether Spring does or not, whether Benner does or not, and whatever monies are left, we'll try to formulate the best service plan that we can with that. But please do keep in mind, as I said in our letter of last week, we really were only considering the 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon as kind of a short-term survival level. I agree with you, that's not going to meet the demand long-term, so it would give us more time, though, to work to a better solution.
I would just like to second what
what Randy said. As mayor of Bellefonte, I was offended by the email. Our community members are passionate, and I was just really offended by the wording of this towards, I feel, this council and our community members. And I just think it was unnecessary, and I wish we could work together to get something worked out, and this seems really poorly worded for somebody who wants to have a working relationship. And like I said, as mayor of Bellefonte, I was offended by this email for our people, our community members.
Well, my apologies for that, and I would say that I am here because we do want to continue to work with you.
Yeah, just to point out for those who don't know, we received a letter from the chair of the board of directors from the CATA Transportation Authority, Mark Parfit, using some pretty strong language in an email or letter to us, describing what he felt our residents acted like, which is what the mayor is referring to. For those of you that didn't see it, I think it was referenced twice, but it's a letter that was sent to us that, yeah, isn't helpful in any way. I appreciate you guys coming. I think everybody can appreciate the fact that costs have gone up. Things are expensive. We don't know if Spring Township or Benner Township are going to stay in. So what we shout and discuss tonight may change drastically after your meeting tonight. Is that correct? I mean, we may find out that Spring and Benner want to stay in, or have found a way to be able to stay in.
Exactly.
We
don't
hopeful,
really know.
Right? We're hopeful. I've heard that word hopeful a couple times, so I'm hopeful.
We're always hopeful. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
I'm hopeful, right?
We're in the business to provide
I'm
as much transportation as we can.
I'm not the best reader, and I don't like getting emails any better than anybody else, but from everything that I've read from you, Mr. Rischel, your communication has been professional and courteous and helpful and informative. I'm sure a lot of people want to point the finger at you guys, but I want to point the finger at us getting this figured out. And obviously, we don't want services for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night. I mean, I can read the comments from all of our residents, and my job is to make a decision that's based on the best for all of them, and that's what we all want to do. So I hope that the communication from this point forward can be hopeful and not pointing fingers at blaming people for the cost that's all of a sudden in front of us. I mean, whoever drew this up, whoever wrote this information and gave it to us did an excellent job. I mean, it's right here. You know, the exact cost down to the penny of what it's cost to run these routes. Why it is that you can't operate in a township. That's not you saying that. That's an article that's part of CATA's bylaws. So it's all in front of us to see that we're in a predicament. And we need to point our fingers, our discussion, our aggression in the direction to get this fixed, and hope that we can. And again, I've heard that word hope quite a few times here tonight, so let's hope that we can do it. I think we can. I mean, stating that out loud for everybody to hear, I mean, we have until June 1st. Nothing's going to change until...
Correct.
Okay.
The deadlines that are approaching, and forgive me if this is confusing, because it is to me. So June 30th, we're on a fiscal year from July 1st to June 30th. So our current contract runs till June 30th, so nothing changes till then. Your contract with us for next year is a contract that requires a 1-year notice for you to leave. So no matter what happens, you will need to support the service at some minimal level through the coming fiscal year, and that would probably be at this lower kind of survival level. What we hope you do is consider a higher level of support. The next decision point you folks have is by April 1st, which is 90 days before this current contract would expire. We would need to hear from the borough that you intended to either renew or to not renew the contract in FY '26. So FY '25 is coming up, so we will be talking about what to do in FY '26. And the reason for that is that we have requirements of, we can't just yank service off the street. You know, we need to give people as much notice as possible when we make changes like that. And I can put this all in writing to you later on. I appreciate the kind comments about our communication. We've really tried to be open. These are our complicated matters, and we're trying to be as forthright as we can.
Could I ask one more question, real quick?
Joanne?
If Benner and Spring stay in versus they both go out, what would the amount of services be made available to Bellefonte?
What was presented at the public hearing was based on Spring, Benner, and Bellefonte all remaining in.
And if those two go out, what happens to Bellefonte if we stay in?
I can't answer that tonight. We'd have to look at the numbers and see what we could provide. But it would be limited to what Bellefonte Borough would be willing to contribute, which I understood was last year's budget amount plus another $5,000 is what we were told. So our assumption is that's what we would have to work with.
Thank you, Dave. Just referencing this email one more time, some of the things that he stated here, if you could clarify for our Bellefonte residents who didn't see the letter. He states, and again, this is the chair of the board of directors stating that CATA is under no obligation to provide future services in Bellefonte. We do so voluntarily, and the cost recovery formula is clearly defined in the authority's joint articles. So when people want to get excited about all of a sudden Bellefonte's facing astronomical cost increase for CATA services, what does he mean when he says the cost recovery formula is clearly defined in the authority's joint articles? He's referencing that we should not have been surprised, right? That it's always been the same amount of recovery that we need from each municipality to pay for the CATA services.
I can't specifically interpret what he's saying, but essentially, yes, the rules that we're supposed to be following are that, to put it very simply, the cost of the service here, we apply a federal and state subsidy, which accounts to about 62% of the coverage of costs. Then we apply the fares that are collected, and then any remaining costs that aren't covered are the responsibility of the municipality. Right. And CATA has been actually subsidizing this service above that for years.
Right, so those rules haven't changed.
No.
It's just that CATA has picked up the cost. I mean, I think his point there is it's there somewhere. It's just hard to read because the sentence before and after are difficult. But, you know, the formula is clearly defined in the authority's joint articles, which didn't just change 6 months ago.
No.
The cost, has been there. Okay.
Yeah.
And then he says the hard truth is the member of the municipalities have been subsidizing service in Bellefonte for years, and there has been virtually no recognition or appreciation of that fact. So other municipalities have been picking up the bill? Is that what?
That's correct.
Okay. For the services that were provided in Bellefonte?
Yes.
Okay. That's what his point is. Okay.
Can I follow up on that, Dave? I want to ask because prior to this, we were paying the same amount, the 5%, based on the formula that was established by CATA, all along the same as all the other municipalities. Now, last year you mentioned that, I remember in the meeting where it was brought up that they would cover the cost just to get us through while we finished working on the formula. Somewhere the formula stopped. The municipalities in the center region made their own decision to cover the 5%, which to me sounds like that's what pushed us out. And that's when these articles came into play, that now we're having to pay the full boat. Even though it might have always been there, I don't think that that's what the borough, we were part of the formula with the center region all along. And that's what seems to me to be what's changed here.
The rules governing how we apportion costs for the contracting municipalities are different from how costs are covered in the center region. With the services in the home area, we have such a diverse package of services that we're able to operate some that make extra money and some that don't make extra money. So we're able to pool all those costs and revenues together. With the services out here, there really is only the one service. So there aren't extra services to cross-subsidize as there are in the main network. And I can't speak for past decisions, but I can say that we did receive fairly significant funding during the COVID period, and we're using those funds to subsidize the essentially the difference, the loss, and those funds are running out, and we are running a deficit. So we are trying to make sure that we're in a financially sustainable position, because we're not permitted to run deficits. If we ran a deficit, it would have to be covered by the 5 member municipalities.
Yes, I have.
Deb Clayton.
Yes, thank you for coming this evening.
Sure.
I have a question about your current budget document, and I'm focusing just on the Catago portion of it. Under the passenger fares, and I know you need to run, under passenger fares, for this fiscal year, the projected fare revenue for 23-24 is $110,000. Based on projected ridership, this reflects a decrease of $20,000 from the previous year. How is that possible when this system, the Catago system, has expanded exponentially from day one? And my other question is under subsidies. Catago subsidy needs for this year are $2.9 million in federal, state, and local operating subsidies. 96.36% of this will be covered by subsidies. That leaves 3.6%, or $106,000. How did that $106 double and end up in our lap?
I'll have to look into that and get back to you. I don't have those numbers.
The numbers in your budget document don't match what we're hearing, and I understand that this is for the current fiscal year and not what you're projecting for next year. But right now you have our 3 municipalities plus basically Harris Township, the Bollesburg area, all only receiving essentially Catago services. So with these 4 municipalities, with just that service, how do you justify charging us more than you are?
All I can say is I'll get back to you with an answer on that.
Okay.
But for clarification, we provide Catago and Cataride services in this area.
Right, but Cataride is a fractional part of
it. Is, but it's actually an extremely expensive piece. Our Cataride service is the most expensive we provide.
Right, but it also has a higher fare at the box.
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, but I am going to have to run.
Yep.
And I'm happy to come back.
Yeah, we will. We have some other people here that need to speak on another topic, so 30 minutes, you're right on time. I know you have to go.
A couple of my staff are going to stay behind. Lori Miller runs our outreach and our planning. She's going to be here, and so is Derek somewhere. He's actually the manager of the behind me. He runs the Catago and the Cataride program, so they'll stay throughout your meeting in case there are any other comments.
So you're headed to a meeting with Spring Township and Banner?
Yes, sir. Spring Township.
Just Spring Township.
Yes.
So we'll remain hopeful.
Always hopeful.
Okay, Dave Rischel.
Thank you very much.
Next on our work session agenda is Bellefonte Area School District Airport Road Elementary School Land Development Plan. I believe there's some people here, maybe some engineer people that can speak to us relative to this situation. Thank you.
All right, I think I'm on now. Good evening. I'll just do a quick introduction of ourselves and then see what all you want me to tell you. Happy to tell you all about the project and give you an overview of the site. I think most people know where it is. My name's Nicole Mendinsky. I'm a landscape architect with HRG. I'm also the project manager for this project. I have one of my colleagues here with me tonight, Doug Weichel. The fun fact for us and the fun thing about this project, to be candid with you, is that we're both residents within the school district. So this has been a distinct pleasure of ours and privilege to provide consulting services to the school district. I myself have 3 young boys within the district, and the youngest of which will likely be a student based on the timing of this elementary school. So this has been extremely exciting. I'm happy to be here tonight, happy to answer the questions we can or respond to you that we'll get back to you if we don't know the answer. But I have basically, on my laptop here, can share screens. There's about 45 plan sheets. They're not all very interesting, but if we want to look at an overall site plan or anything to orient you to the site, I'm happy to do so. In general terms, the elementary school location is kind of the large farm tract that's located along Airport Road. As you go past the high school, turn right on Airport Road, and you're traveling toward Governor Park. It is the large farm area to the right as you're driving toward the park.
I'm thinking, like a plan overview sheet would be good to look at and kind of orient everyone. I think, where the driveways are and a little bit about how people will enter the property and exit the property. As you know, there's a lot of discussion about traffic flow. So this is probably a good place to start.
Okay. Can zoom out a little bit more. This is quite a large parcel here that we're working with, the high school. This is Bishop Street, and this is Airport Road after the intersection becomes Governor's Park Road. Governor's Park back in this location. So essentially the site program and the layout, the approach of it, the concept is that typical of most schools at this point in time, the goal is to separate bus traffic and parent drop-off traffic. And so what you'll see is, once built, the daily operations would be such that if you're coming down the roadway, the first driveway you arrive upon is the staff parking and the parent drop-off. Long queuing lines, many people doing drop-off, increasing number as the years go on, and so they're able to queue up along this entire stretch, drop off students. There is kind of a central concrete corridor that separates the two parking areas for the parents and the buses. So they will come in, come back out in this driveway. The second driveway, you will have that primarily in the morning time, this would be the bus drop-off loop. So they would enter this way, line up as they arrive, drop students off, and circulate back out the same driveway. In terms of the remainder of the site, you'll see that this is kind of the large U-shaped building. There is a courtyard in the back for outdoor play and learning opportunities. There is also, what you're not seeing, this is actually slightly uphill, just a couple of feet from the school. This is a large play area that kind of abuts and buffers between the school and the park. And just being a public facility in general, I will throw out the caveat that these facilities, the large open green space, and this would be a playground eventually with equipment and play structures, those are available for the public to use. There are apartment units here, also back here, and then you have the park. So these facilities are kind of located as such that there would be sidewalk connections for the public to use those after hours.
So there's been lots of discussion among this council since I've started about the intersection at Bishop Street and Airport Road. Is there any discussion in this plan for what to do with the increased traffic that would occur out at the Bishop Street intersection?
There has been some significant correspondence between the borough's traffic engineer and ourselves representing the school district. So where we're at currently in the process is we've kind of picked up the PennDOT scoping application that essentially says we are going to study this, and we agree upon the parameters that we're going to study at that intersection. There's been a lot of discussion. We've gotten PennDOT's signature on, yes, we agree that that's what you need to study in the traffic impact study. We're working through a few final things, and I'm hopeful that today we addressed the last two remaining comments for the traffic engineer on representing the borough. Essentially, where we're at right now, we are not proposing any realignment, reconfiguration of the intersection. However, it does meet a signal warrant as we're seeing it currently. We have given all the data on the trips that we're anticipating from parents, from buses and such, reviewed traffic cameras and things to try to validate that as much as possible. And I think, honestly, we're in the home stretch of addressing the borough comments on the transportation side of things. So if we get that signature, the next step is PennDOT will, now that the borough has agreed to it, PennDOT will complete their review of the actual traffic impact study. We have submitted that at this time, that was submitted previously. We kind of went above and beyond what we would submit for the scoping application to try to advance that process. However, I believe they're holding review of that until we have the borough signature on the scoping application.
Joanne?
I have another traffic intersection question. Where the buses come in and where Airport Road turns into Governor's Park, there's a hill there that is very, very hard if you're coming down Governor's Park to see over. What are your plans to make that more visible and safer for that whole intersection there?
You're absolutely correct. When you know, those of us that drive on that, we catch air there, right? So we're well aware of the kind of the vertical alignment of that roadway. Currently, what's being proposed and is included in the scoping application, we have done a preliminary realignment of that intersection. It's very minor, but essentially, instead of these two legs coming into Airport Road at an angle, you would have a more traditional four-way cross intersection so that they're perpendicular. So that helps kind of the sight distance aspect, but what you're referencing is also, you know, the vertical grade and the crest in the road. That will be handled through the HOP process. So like you have all these gates, you have the scoping application, you have the traffic impact study, and then you'll have the actual detailed layout design and plan review of the highway occupancy permit. What I'm showing, what we're anticipating right now is that you will have a stop. Basically the through movement will be along Airport Road, and then the two legs, you know, the driveway for the school, and then the turn around the corner would be stop controlled. And there is definitely likely a possibility that that hump gets basically shaved down a little bit to improve the sight.
It's not a possibility, that will be taken.
Yes.
So what I see on this map here is still showing the angles. Do you have a picture of how you might be straightening that out?
We do, but it has not been submitted to the borough. So where we're at right now is concurrently trying to address the various agency comments and what we're anticipating the scope of, you know, what a contractor eventually bids out there. That intersection work will be out of the school building contract because it's still in the review process and will be for quite some time under PennDOT's jurisdiction. So it is being developed, but it will not be part of this first phase of construction, if you will.
The school's going to take approximately 18 months to 2 years to construct. The signal or any offsite improvements are going to take 4 to 6 months maximum. So that's why, and I think on your agenda has an agreement that the school district would have with the borough for any offsite improvements that is required through the PennDOT HOP process. And the school district will be responsible for all those costs.
I notice in that contract that there's a whole bunch of blank spaces. Do you have any idea what we're talking about at this point?
For costs, right now we're looking at costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $675,000.
Any other? Mr. Johnson?
I sort of lost track of what you were saying about the highway occupancy permit and the highway study. So on the Bishop Street and the Airport Road intersection, that study is still in progress or has not been completed?
Correct.
If it warrants a light, if it does or does not?
We do know it warrants a light, yes.
It hasn't been completed, correct?
It has been completed.
The study is completed, it's not through the review process.
By PennDOT?
Correct.
Okay. Is there money in the budget if it's warranted? To
Yes.
pay for the light? I couldn't hear that.
Yes.
I didn't know
Yes.
if that 650,000 included budgeting for that light, or you were just talking about the turn?
Both of them.
Okay. That was my question.
All that money is allocated, and right now, there's budgetary concerns, of course, with the elementary school, with the school district, to try to afford what's being designed.
So in that process, we're designing a light at Parkview and Bishop as well. We've been required to install that light. We're sort of concerned about the impact that the school and that light will have on our light. So the sooner we know, or how is the coordinating discussion going on with the borough with placing their light and the school's light?
We
that
have
may
been given all that information to your traffic consultant. He has all that information from ours. We have nothing about any generation from that. So we've been giving your guys all the information that he wants and or needs.
Okay.
And if there are any intercoordination that's required by the signals, we would be more than happy to put those into our signal. That's what we said. Any off-site improvements that's required through the PennDOT process, the school district would be happy to do, and we would like to the school district would like to enter into a legal agreement with you guys to do
Sure.
that.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bracco.
I understand during the review of this with the Planning Commission, no questions were asked and no answers were given as far as the fire department review that they were doing of your plans. And I know the Center Region Code has, as of January 4th, as this is dated, were sent to your company for there's 14 items that weren't addressed.
There are fire department review comments that are basically part of the building code review. And what the architect for the project has done is tried to have a preliminary coordination call with the building official, because we cannot actually submit, therefore address comments for the building code comments. They will not accept that until we get through land development approval. That is when they will accept the plans and begin their review. That being said, most of the items are simply striping and confirming pavement thicknesses can withstand the loading capacity of the fire truck and its apparatus.
Well, it also affects the one lonely hydrant that sets out by Bishop Street that's going to pump water into the new school in a 3-inch pipe that's probably older than I am.
That is-
And if it pulls down too much and busts that pipe, it could go back into the regular drinking water. But nobody's looking at it, and that's the point, is the questions haven't been asked, or should have been asked, or didn't get answered.
We are installing a water system within the property, within the development, to take care of all of the flow needs, because the borough's water system can't provide sufficient pressure or volume. So basically, we're putting a big tank underground.
I saw that, yeah, I saw that.
And the pumps will draw water from that tank that will slowly fill up, so it doesn't harm or do any detrimental impact to the borough's existing water system. And then they'll use that pumped water if there is any accident that fire is needed.
I still don't know if that change, I mean, shouldn't the pipe that's out there now be looked at to see what type of condition it's under or in?
I'm not sure how I can do that for you and not deal with the multifamily housing that's out there existing. Your system, I'm not sure, could you tell us what the condition of your system is, of those pipes?
Unless you dig it out and take a look at it, it's got to be down there somewhere. That's what I'm saying, we don't know, and I would hate to see, you put a school in there and you're pulling more water out of it, and all of a sudden, bam, you don't have any water, and nobody has water then. And that's just because of that
I think
1
he just
3-inch
said,
line.
I think he just said that the school's going to be on their own water system, right?
No, we'll connect to your system unless you're telling us that we need to drill our own well. I wouldn't want to do that.
I'm not saying that, I just want to make sure that we don't hit an uh-oh, look what happened. Especially if it does tend to get back into the water system.
Those types of things have to be inspected by authority, right?
Yes.
DEP,
the
water authority, code.
Yes.
I mean, they're not going to hook into a dilapidated system and start pumping thousands of gallons more water into a school. So let's hope that the processes that are in place cover our basis here.
Understand. And basically what we're trying to say is we're not trying to draw that rapid response that gentleman is asking about. It is just like on an average house draw, so we're putting it into a big tank, and any flush and any big withdrawal that you're concerned about on your piping system would not be impacted by this.
Okay, so then if code has been working on this and did this and sent these in, have they been talked to or spoken
No, we
to?
did not do that and send that in.
Why?
Because we cannot have a building code review until land development
This isn't
plans are
building
reviewed.
code, this is to look at the rate of water and things that are needed for the fire department. The access to the
That's
school
correct.
going around.
It's the same agency, and the architect has responses pre-populated for when we are at that point that address how the fire pump was sized and the tank is sized to ensure that it can meet an event.
And those references that he has on there is from the building code.
Yeah, I know.
And I would love to be able to submit building plans.
Yeah. I don't like to vote for things that aren't shown. And
Sorry,
this is
I
one
couldn't
of
hear
them.
that. I couldn't hear, I'm sorry.
I said I have trouble voting on something that doesn't exist at this point.
That does not exist in your ordinances. So our land development plans as they stand right now are addressing zoning and subdivision and land development ordinance data. Now, don't get me wrong, we are proactively incorporating coordination items as they're coming in through the approval process prior to going out to bid. So that data is on the plans, and we have the responses pre-populated for that, but we can't submit, they will not be reviewed until the building code is, until the land development plans are approved, and then they will accept a formal application.
So how many times might we have this meeting because your plan showed final and preliminary on top of it when you first showed it up there? What's that mean? We have to meet on this 4 more times, 5 more times to pass something through? Because even looking at the map there, you don't know where you're entering the building, you don't know, you know where the road is and everything, but some of the height of the building isn't known, and that's in this letter as well, because if they can't get a ladder up to the roof, they can't get a fire truck there. I mean, that's what it is.
If you vote to allow us to submit building plans, we would be very happy to do that, sir.
So what you're saying is what Mr. Brackbill's bringing up can't be addressed until the building plans have been submitted. Then we know the actual height of the buildings, and we know where the water's hooked into and all those things. At this point, we're not voting on anything, and this is a preliminary drawing to kind of give us an idea of what's going on.
It's preliminary final to follow what your regulations are.
Yep.
We're trying to follow your regulations.
Of course, yes.
And that's
Good. All right.
That's what we want to do.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from council for these fine folks? Yeah, thanks for coming in. Looking forward to this, honestly.
Thank you very much. This is a great opportunity.
We unfortunately here, or fortunately, have lots of concerns from our residents about the impact. So those are things that you guys haven't been part of, and I think we kind of expressed it, but you guys addressed a big concern there for us tonight with what Mr. Johnson asked you. So we appreciate the time and your explanations, and hopefully that'll make everybody feel a little bit better about this. So thank you very much.
And we hope so, and we appreciate it. Our biggest thing is like what, and I think we failed to say at the beginning, and I apologize for taking up a couple of extra seconds. we would like to go out to bid so that we can have the school ready, not for next school year, but for the school year after. And that bidding time is rapidly approaching us. And that's why when we got the planning commission approval, it's trying to get it as quickly as possible. So if there are any concerns or any additional concerns that you have prior to your next meeting, please, if you can get them to us so we can address those. But thank you very much.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding what's going to happen in the main session regarding the school district. We have a motion for the legal document. Should the motion for the school district and the borough administration include the estimated $675,000 and all the blanks in the draft document, or do we need to, are we just passing with those left blank to be considered later before we send it to the solicitor?
Yeah, we're just going to look at the agenda and follow the motion would be sufficient to get that to the solicitor. We have a long ways to go, but I think that's a step in the right direction.
So we will be passing this with the blanks still in place, is what you're saying?
It's a review of the draft agreement by the solicitor. If the solicitor has comments, they're only estimating what those numbers are. They're not fixed numbers.
Okay. So it will be left blank is the bottom line. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay, that'll adjourn our Bellefonte Borough work session. The meeting will begin in approximately 7 minutes.
You're watching CNET, Center County's Government and Educational Access Network.
I'd like to call to order the Bellefonte Borough Council meeting. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bernier.
Present.
Mr. Brackbill.
Present.
Ms. Cleaton.
Here.
Ms. Stan.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Present.
Ms. McKean.
Here.
Ms. Purnell.
Here.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Here.
Ms. Tosti-Vasey.
I'm here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here.
Additions, thank you, Mr. Chair. Additions to the council meeting agenda. Does anybody on council have additions to tonight's agenda that they would like to speak on now? No? All right, next is public comment. I see we have several folks in the audience tonight. Now is the time to come up, state your name, and please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. It's my job to try to keep you to 3 minutes, so let's work together on that. But anybody that would like to come up and speak, now is your time. State your name and your address. And
good evening. Thank you. My name is Roger Herman. I live on Curtin Street in Bellefonte. And just a historic note, it's been almost a half century since I sat where you guys are. I was a councilman. And one of the things we did when I was on the council was I've been here, this is my third trip about this, but I'm quite concerned about it. We made Ridge Street one way, going from Curtin Street down to Beaver. We did that as a courtesy to a family by the name of Catalano that had teenage kids who loved cars, and they had a lot of friends who loved cars, and so there was a parking problem. So as a courtesy, we made Ridge Street one way. But I'm old enough now to be on prescription drugs. When you're on prescription drugs, it's easy to get on a prescription, but very hard to get off. And that's true of municipal ordinances too. It's very hard, apparently, to stop the one-way thing on Ridge Street in spite of the fact that it's no longer needed. Now, let me show you something. This is sort of a blow-up of that area. This is North Allegheny. I often come from the Milesburg direction. Here's Curtin Street. I live where the little X is right there. And here's the problem. When I come up from Milesburg, I don't just turn left here. I have to overshoot in order to see what's down the hill. There's a traffic light down there at Lynn Street, and you have to overshoot in order to see the traffic pattern there. So this is a weird and somewhat dangerous thing, especially if people are following you in there in a hurry. And then I come up here, and all this little X business here is doing a three-point turn to get in front of my house, and I have to park in front of my house frequently because my wife needs medical attention at times, and we sometimes have to make a midnight trip to the hospital. Wouldn't it be much easier if I could do this? Go up bridge and go like that, and simply park. I'm asking you to maybe, you know, I've done this out of public spiritedness for a while. Tonight, I guess I'm asking if you can't do me a reverse favor, you know? And there's no sense going into all this. These are the streets from Armour to Allegheny. Curtin is here, Church Lane there, Ardell Alley, and Beaver. I heard that council had sort
30
of
seconds,
entertained
Mr.
this
Herman.
idea some time ago, but that it was deemed that Ridge Street was too narrow. I'm here to tell you I've measured them all. Ridge Street, in most of its descent from Curtin Street to Beaver, is about 16 feet in width. That compares to 10.5 feet for Ardell Alley, or no, not Alley, Ardell Lane, and 10.5 feet for Church Lane. And those are two-way. For Ridge Street coming up to Curtin from Lynn, it's about 14 feet wide. This is wider. There's a little neck right there at the corner of Curtin.
So
I'll have to
I
admit that.
have to cut you off. So what you're asking us is if we can reconsider Ridge Street being one way. Is that correct?
No, well, make it two-way.
Right, okay. We will take that into consideration, and someone
I
from
could
the
leave
borough.
this here if anybody wants to look at it. All the street measurements are there.
You can, we just have to move on to our next,
Okay,
somebody else.
I'll put it over.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, my name's Tim Blattner. I live at 124 East Beaver Street, which I learned last week was in the West Ward. But two topics, I think they're both on the agenda. The first one is Catago transportation, and I missed the earlier meeting because I was at work. Sorry about that. The only thing I want to say on that is a suggestion to approach MTM, Micro Transit Management, to see if they would be willing to continue the service at a different cost than CATA is, since they're the subcontractor and they already have the infrastructure and everything else in place. The second item I wanted to make a brief statement on is the veterans-only parking sign or parking spot. As a 8-year veteran of the United States Army, I don't really think that's necessary unless it's for people that are disabled. Because, I don't know, with my service, I don't think I should be entitled to a prime parking spot downtown. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Morgan Geen. I don't live in the borough, but I work with Center County government. I work with our drug and alcohol office. I deal specifically with our treatment courts, so DUI court and drug court. I came to talk about the Catago issue. I was here for the public hearing last week, and I really just want to make sure that, obviously, you guys are aware that the situation is dire. I mean, it's not going to be a good situation if we lose that kind of transportation in the borough or in the two townships either way. But as far as like my individuals are concerned, we have a mandatory loss of license. So they have no other way to get anywhere that they need to go other than public transportation or finding a ride with someone else. So they're required to be at the courthouse 5 to 7 days out of the week to do different things for our program. It's a highly intensive program, and it requires a lot of effort from them to make sure they're maintaining their sobriety and they're being a productive member of society, and Catago is essential to that. I have individuals that will quite literally end up back in state prison if that resource goes away. If they cannot get to where they need to go, they will be penalized for it and they will be excluded from our program. So that's something that I think is really important to consider when you're discussing these things with CATA. And I'm not saying that the blame is at your feet in no way, shape, form, or fashion. I agree that the numbers don't quite make sense and that they need to kind of figure that out. But if they would come back with a different suggestion of raising the rate plus you guys offering up a little bit more money, I would strongly encourage you to consider that. I know your budget's tight. I understand that you've already approved things for this calendar year, but this is quite literally the difference in some of these individuals' freedom. And outside of my court, it's the difference between people having to take 3 buses to get $100 worth of groceries and then spend all afternoon in State College. Because if we do the 2 hours in the morning and the 2 hours in the evening, by the time you get to State College, shop for your groceries, and are ready to come back, Catago is done until the evening. There's no way that people are going to be able to make that work. I know that you guys are really committed to doing what's best for the residents of Bellefonte, and for me, I guess I'm more invested because the courthouse is here, so everybody on my caseload is required to be in Bellefonte pretty much every day of the working week, and that puts me in a really tough position because I'm here to advocate for what's best for these guys. I'm here to advocate for them achieving sobriety, maintaining a life, getting themselves to a position where they're proud of the person that they are, they're proud of what they achieved, and we're going to cut that down because they need a resource that's being ripped out from underneath their feet. So I do know that you guys are considering that, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm communicating on behalf of my clients and advocating for them that this is more than not being able to go where they want to go. This is the difference between them having their freedom and them being in state prison.
Thank you.
Others for public comment? Okay, we're going to move on to the meeting then. We're going to move on to communications, written. There, Mr. Stewart.
There was just one item from CATA as a follow-up, a summary of the hearing that took place last week. So those details are there in your materials. There's no action that we're requesting other than what was listed under old business.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. The next item is the consent agenda. All items listed in the consent agenda are considered routine and will be acted upon one single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of council requests specific items to be removed for separate action.
Mr. President, I'll make that motion to approve the items listed under consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Brackett.
Second the motion, Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackville?
Yes.
Ms. Clayton?
Yes.
Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Holderman. Next is reports from our different departments within the borough. The first one is our mayor.
Thank you. For tonight's Mayor's Spotlight, I would like to recognize the Bellefonte Borough Refuse Crew. It is comprised of Steve Caldana, Jordan Bettingle, Scott Whitehill, and Sam Horner. They do an incredible job in rain, snow, all sorts of conditions, and they're a very big part of our community. And I just wanted to recognize our borough refuse crew and for everything that they do for our community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Next is a new report for us here on Bellefonte Borough Council, and that's going to come from our junior council member, Mr. Larson. Mr. Larson.
Thank you. For the junior council member report for today, I simply just have a short school report. Hopefully in the future it'll get a little longer, but right now it's just strictly school. So the school's currently been operating on a normal schedule, and we started the third quarter about 2 weeks ago. In the last week, 9th and 10th graders have been working on their MAPS testing, which is just a test to measure their knowledge in different core subjects and their growth. But upperclassmen have been working on the career development, so we've had people come in and we could ask them separate questions about what their lifestyle's like, what the schooling's like, just like what they do in their career. And we even get like shadowing opportunities from it. And then for the extracurriculars, the class of 2025 is holding a blood drive on the 12th, and teachers and staff are invited to participate. And then Bellefonte's National Honor Society is holding a book drive, so if you'd like to donate any books, you can talk to me about that. And then Student Council and Minithon are looking for donations for children with cancer. So that's everything.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. He's our newest member of council. He's been with us for a month now. It's something new for the council. He's a student at Bellefonte Area School District, and we're glad to have him. And tonight was his first report, so be ready for his next report next month, right? Good job. Harb. I see Gina out there smiling. What do you got, Gina?
I'm always smiling. So we do have two Harb items on the agenda. They're a little bit complicated, and I'm happy to explain them and go into detail should you need that. Harb is recommending the denial of the following projects that have already been completed. The first is 225 West Lamb Street. There was a blue metal corrugated roof that was put on that house, and then it was without prior Harb approval, and so then a letter had been sent, and then we are at this point now. That is the first project. Then the second project is 408 East Lynn Street. Also, there were some window replacements that were done at this property without prior Harb approval. It was discovered by me, and then following up with the homeowner to get that application submitted. Of course, the windows had been installed. So at the last meeting, Harb did review these projects, and because they are not historically appropriate, and had these applicants come to Harb prior to doing them, Harb would have recommended appropriate materials that could have been used in both of these instances. Harb is recommending the denial of a certificate of appropriateness based on these materials not meeting the Secretary of Interior's standards for historic rehabilitation.
Okay, thank you, Gina. That sounds, that explanation sounds good to me. Does anybody have any questions for Gina? We're going to be asking for a motion here to approve this.
Oh, okay, I'll make a motion.
Thank you. We had a first and a second motion to approve the denial of the certificate of appropriateness of the above referenced projects that Gina just pointed out. Discussion.
My question is, if we deny this, what happens to the homeowners? Do they have to pay to have those things removed?
The short answer is yes. They would be required to
comply,
which would mean potentially, or yes. The reason why I say potentially is because this has not happened before, so I'm not sure. I haven't seen it in execution, but yes, they would have to remove the materials that were put. So in this case, the roof that was put on, and then the windows that were installed. They would be required to remove those and then replace them with appropriate materials.
And you had mentioned, Gina, in your presentation to us that they had been told prior to putting this stuff on that what the requirements were?
Well, both homeowners I had found in property files, we have property files, both homeowners had come to HARB previously for other projects. So they did not come to HARB for these particular projects, but sometimes, you wonder, oh, do they know if they're in the HARB or, whatever the case may be. So these homeowners did not come to HARB prior to these particular projects that were done. So they were discovered after they had already been completed.
Yes.
I'm just curious, how do the windows not comply? I mean, the roof would be fairly obvious, but...
So the not to get too much into the weeds, I guess, but the house is a 1950s ranch style house. The windows that were there that were replaced were original windows to the home. They have a particular pattern that is a style of that time period. There's a multi-pane. I don't know the jargon, but they were replaced with a very modern picture and casement window. In the HARB review I believe it was last week, but at the HARB meeting, HARB had said, and unfortunately those homeowners could not be at that HARB meeting, but HARB, when they were discussing amongst themselves, said, this is unfortunate because had they come, we could have recommended a replacement window that would have been more in the style that their house is. So, yeah, I mean, when that's the purpose of HARB is, it's not meant to be this punitive review board. It's meant to be a resource for homeowners that have historic homes to come and to, be able to say, hey, I want to replace my windows, or I want to rehab my windows. How can I do that? What are the resources available? What are the historic styles that would be appropriate to do so?
It's going to come to us here in a minute to vote, so I guess I'm guessing this is on everybody's mind. We're going to vote here in a minute to, hang on once.
Oh, yeah.
I thought because I'm one of the homeowners, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm new to this.
Just hang on.
I didn't know if I was supposed to speak now. I don't want to vote until I'm able to.
Yep, we're not going to. Hang on. I guess our question before we vote is, I've never seen this before, but the materials and style do not meet the Secretary of Interior standards for historic rehabilitation. Do the residents, and I guess one's here, do the residents at these two homes, and I know we've talked about this before, Gina, so I'm sorry for bringing it up again, but are the homeowners aware that the Secretary of Interior standards so that they know not to and how to proceed with renovations to their expensive homes? Are they aware of this clearly beforehand?
So homeowners are aware of HARB. HARB exists to, the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, it's a very large document. There are these 10 bullet points that do exist as resources for homeowners on our website and various other places. But the document itself, the standards for rehabilitation are very detailed, and they are more of a complex document that someone with historic preservation background would understand and be able to interpret. The purpose of HARB.
But we're talking about a roof and windows.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can't complicate it as far, we're talking about what kind of roof can I put on my house? And what kind of windows can I put in my house? How would a person know if they're putting the right windows or right roof on?
They could go to the HARB website.
Or they could come to HARB. They could reach out.
Right. They come to HARB. So when you're in the historic district, you have the obligation as the homeowner of living in the historic district to come to HARB when you're doing exterior renovations.
That sounds better than a complicated list of...
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
But the motion that when HARB makes their recommendation, they're making their recommendation based off of the standards that they're following. So.
Please.
So, we've dealt with this before, Mr. President, and I think Joanne, Randy and I were on for some other decision-making. We did take a look at houses that are in the historical area, that ones that were built after the turn of the century. There is a little more leeway, or should be, from HARB when they consider what's appropriate and what's not appropriate for those houses. In other words, this house was, I'm not sure, I heard you say built in the 50s. So the historic value of the house is much less than one that was built in 1900 or 1910. So sometimes I think HARB is a recommending board that you need to consider the age of the house when it was built and what might still look appropriate to the windows that were replaced. However, I do understand that the owner should come before HARB and get that approval before they are installed. But I think HARB does need to give this residents a little leeway based on the era or the time the home was built.
Shauna.
Okay. So I'm just a simple country girl, and so I moved to the town of Bellefonte, and if my neighbor hadn't mentioned to me that I needed approval to paint my house a certain color, I would not have known. I was honored with a welcome call from someone, I guess from the borough, when I bought the house, but nothing was ever mentioned to me about HARB. I saw the house, I liked the house, so I bought it. And I didn't know any guidelines, I wasn't aware of anything like that. I didn't even really know that I was in a historic district. I just saw it, bought it, because I liked it, and I wasn't given any information.
Yes, so I would like to speak to that. I can't speak to what was done prior to me coming here 3 years ago, but since I have been here, I've made it a point that the HARB website has adequate information for homeowners. The other thing that, and I don't know when this happened, but now realtors that sell homes in the historic district are required as part of their documents to disclose to the buyer that it is a home in the historic district. And also, with our updated historic guidelines, which I'm working with our consultants on, education will be a large piece to that. So, I can't speak to Ms. McKean when you moved here, like how long ago that was, but I think nowadays it's pretty rare for someone to now move into the historic district and not know, because there are lots of various resources that people learn before buying the home. And then I just wanted to address Mr. Johnson's comment, and then I would really love for the homeowner to speak, because she definitely deserves that time. HARB certainly does take age into consideration, and they want to, ultimately it's up to council to decide how they're going to move forward, because HARB is just a recommending body. And HARB is recommending, in this case with the windows, that they not be approved because they don't match the 1950s style of a window. So I'm not here to debate the merits of that. I'm just presenting the facts of, I want to make sure it's clear what HARB is, what their motion and what their recommendation is. They're not trying to say, well, these should be, an 1860s window style. They, in their discussion, they were saying what the windows that were replaced from that era of that time period that house was built. So just wanted to address those two comments.
Thank you, Gina.
Can I say something real quick?
Yep, go ahead.
Gina, do you recall the house on Allegheny Street, Allegheny and Lamb? It was just a few years ago, put a metal roof on. Could you enlighten council as to what the determination was, if you recall?
I don't know, I was on council at that time, but I recall that, and that council had, are you asking for what was the net outcome of that? So council had basically said that the roof would not be considered, would not receive its certificate of appropriateness. It would not be considered a use of appropriate historical materials. And I believe there was some language about, and maybe Joanne probably can speak to it better, but that should the roof be replaced in the future, that it would then retroactively be replaced with the appropriate materials. Go ahead, Joanne.
Gina is correct. Well, the motion that was made at that time was that the denial would go through with a caveat that the roof, when it needed to be replaced again, would have to go back through HARB for a roof that met the guidelines, and that a statement would be put into the deeds, a lien saying that, so that future councils and HARB would know that they have to follow the Secretary of Guidance through the recommendations of HARB.
Well, that makes no sense to me. The Secretary standards were already in place. We're literally talking about telling people, yep, you're good. 30 to 50 years from now, when you have to replace your metal corrugated roof, when I won't even be around, make sure you do it the way Harb said. So I don't know why we would do that again, but let's hear from the young lady that's here that owns one of the homes, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if I was going to come up earlier.
You come on up. You come on up here. Tell us who you are, and you give us your presentation, please. Help us understand this.
Good evening. My name is Liza Kelleher. This is my husband, Matt. First, I would like to start by apologizing to HARB and the Borough Council. By no means were my husband and I trying to be sneaky. I'm sorry. I'm like not used to this kind of stuff. By no means were we trying to be sneaky and avoid dealing with HARB for the most recent renovation project. We moved into our home on Lynch Street in 2007, and since then had done many different renovation projects to our home. The oldest project dating back to 2009, when we put an additional bedroom in the home. I know the board questioned as to why we consulted with them in 2009 and did not for this project. Until I spoke with Gina, I didn't even realize that that particular project had been approved by HARB. This was something the contractor that we used at the time must have applied for on his own, or he recommended for me to do it, and I just truly did not remember. I had a 1-year-old and I was pregnant with my second child at that time. We then did several other major projects within our home over the years, and the contractor we utilized for those projects applied for any permit that they needed. None of them needing to be approved by HARB because of them being to the interior of our home. We knew that our 2 front windows were going to need replaced sooner rather than later due to the deterioration we were seeing inside. The seals were no longer working, and for the past year, we were noticing that mold was growing in the crevices of the window. I would clean it, and within a week, it would come back. When we purchased the home, the previous owner had a film placed on the inside of the window to prevent light from coming in and make it harder to see inside. Our dogs over the years had scratched that film, and there was no way to remove that. We then decided to hire Michael Haluga, an architect out of Bollesburg, who specializes in older homes and helping to keep the integrity of our existing house. He developed a few different options for us to choose from that he felt were most appropriate for the home. I have the blueprints here if anybody would like to see them. We then met with our contractor and decided to order a high-quality Anderson window from YBC and proceed with the project. In no way were we trying to avoid working with HARB. I truly didn't even think about having to apply for a permit of that sort. Our project is almost complete. We're waiting for our custom shutters and blinds to now be installed. We have over $10,000 invested in this project, and I do not have the means to remove or change anything at this point. I'm sorry. I'm asking that you guys please override HARB's decision to not approve this completed project so we are able to move on and learn a lesson from this. At this point, we have no plans to change anything else on the exterior of our home, but if need be, we will certainly be consulting with HARB prior to any additional projects. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this motion?
I was in Bellefonte whenever Harb, I believe, started because they wanted to have, I was going to be in the Harb area. I live on Badger Lane, corner of Cherry Lane. And anything I see down in that area are garages looking at me, and it was because one person wanted to have their house in Harb. But Harb wasn't working that way because they did it in blocks. And that's the way some of these other houses fall into that area, because they weren't picking and choosing the age of houses. They were taking areas and making it Harb area. And I think when you get into a situation like that, if it's a 1950 house, I don't understand why we can't come up with a way to review those homes before something like this happens. I understand the older and trying to keep the older stuff in, but when it's mixed and matched as much as it is, and the people get mad because, oh, they put a roof on, a metal roof on, we don't have a metal roof, we had to go through Harb. Then they take, well, I don't know, we're sorry, we didn't know. And we get a lot of that, especially with these roofers. With the windows, I don't know, I didn't see them, I don't know what it looks like. I'm sure it's probably okay, in the way it looks. I mean, it's only 1950.
Any other comments relative to the motion that's in front of us?
I would like to amend the original motion to make it similar to what we've done in the past, and that the certificate of appropriateness have a condition on it that a lien be placed on the home stating that the replacement windows are out of compliance, and that any future change to these windows must go through the the HAR process and to meet the Secretary of Interior's standards for historic rehabilitation.
But it already says that, Joanne. There's
Well,
already,
there's
already an agency that I've listed, there's already a program in place for
What this is doing is allowing them to...
That's your motion. If I can get a second on Joanne's motion to amend the first one, we'll do that. If
I'll
not,
second it, Clayton.
What this does is gives the
I
current
understand what it
property
does.
owners...
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay.
The current property owners have said that they can't afford to replace what they've already done. This allows them to keep what they have already done, but noting that any changes to these windows in the future must go back through HARB for
So we're
appropriate.
just denying so we're just not approving the denial. The first motion that was in front of us would fix that. But we got a second, so we're just going to create another motion. So we need to vote on...
Can I ask a question?
What do we do about the first one? Go ahead.
Does this cover both properties then? The roof and the windows?
She's making the motion. The first one does.
I was making for 408, but if someone wants to make it for both of them, go ahead. But this one particular one is the one I was really concerned about.
I thought we were voting on them together, though.
Well, we can do them separately. I was at the HARB meeting, and the Solar Shield, and Gina can probably give more information on this. They had, for the very first time, the person from Solar Shield came in and finally acknowledged that they had been doing things inappropriately here within Bellefonte. And do you remember what he said about what was going to happen going forward?
The Solar Shield representative was very accommodating, and he was eager to do things right in the historic district. And so in that conversation, one of the things that he reached out to me after getting additional information on historic district guidelines, but he sort of assured HARB verbally that their sales representative team and those, when they go in to do roof replacements, would do their due diligence to make sure that even if they were in the borough at all, they would call me or, call the borough to make sure that the home was either in or not in the historic district, and then move forward from there. I don't want to keep belaboring this, but related to this conversation tonight, there is discussion with HARB, and something I'm working on with Mr. Schneider from Code with is possibly implementing some sort of contractor permitting program so that possibly, and it's just in a verbal talking about discussion right now, to possibly alleviate this issue that arises from time to time. I know that it came up a few years ago. It's come up, I think, once or twice since I've been in this position. And there's always this question of homeowner contractor responsibility. And I think, should we maybe possibly move forward with some sort of contractor permitting system, we may be able to nip this problem before it starts, and then we won't be at this point having these difficult conversations.
Well, we're here.
Yes.
So let's make sure we understand the motion that's in front of us before we create a second one. The motion, and I think most council doesn't want to see them have to put new windows in their house.
And that's what my motion's trying to do.
Joanne, the motion that's in front of us is to approve a denial by HARB of their certificate of appropriateness. I don't want to deny them the work that they already did. I'm convinced that it was an honest mistake. I don't know why we can't discuss it in terms that everybody can understand, and why we need a second motion. I don't want to deny you folks your windows or your roof. I think it was a mistake. I think you did it honestly. It's a little confusing the way it's written, or I'm the only idiot in this room, but I don't want to deny them what they've done. I believe it was an honest mistake, and there's a problem with the situation. So I don't know why we have to create something else. I want to vote as council on the motion that's in front of us to approve the denial of the work that was done at these residences. Is that clear?
So Kent, the reason I made this motion is based on what...
Joanne, I just want to make a vote on our first motion before
You
we
can't,
can't.
we have an amendment to the motion. We have to vote on
Which only
that.
covers one of the two properties. So this is going to take 45 minutes.
Let me finish, please. What I'm saying is that Gina initially said that if we approve this denial, they would have to take them out and put them in.
I understand
What
that.
I'm trying to do is to make that not happen by saying that it's an inappropriate,
Well, then we could just vote against the denial. I'm not for the denial. I'm voting against the denial, and we can take a vote.
we have to vote for the motion that I made before you can vote for that.
Well, there you go, Joanne. Now we have a confusing motion on the floor, because that only covers one.
I will make it for both of them if it makes you happy. For both 225 and 408.
I think last time this came up, we had that alternate motion to make the note about it was not appropriate at this time, but going forward, if it were replaced, it would follow the appropriateness.
And
So
that's
for
what I'm trying to do. It's
consistency,
exactly the same thing as the last time,
Right.
and the time before, and the time before.
Well, we have to do it for both.
I said for both.
So we need a second now. We have a third motion on the floor,
No, I said,
or an amended second motion. Because the first one that you made was just for 408, so if it's for both, we can move forward with that?
yeah, we'll make it for both, and we can move ahead.
So if we approve the amended motion, that means the first motion is irrelevant. Is that right?
I believe so. If you turn it down, then we go back to the original motion.
Want to clarify
So-
the motion before we vote?
So,
What's the motion on the table?
yeah, would you make it clear to, the way I understand it is, if we approve the amended motion, the repairs remain as they are. However, if they're ever replaced again, then they need to comply with what HARB specifies. So if you vote yes to the amended motion, the windows stay the same, the roof stays the same. However, if they're ever replaced again, they have to abide by the HARB rules. If we vote no, then that means we're supporting the HARB decision to deny them the certificate of appropriateness.
I'm not in favor of these two going together when you're looking at a 1950 house. And I don't know what other ages the other homes were that we did give a break to. But I think what we're adding, I don't, like Ken said, 50 years from now, who's going to know, sitting from this table and folks out here? Hopefully somebody might be still around. But anyway, I would rather see it go back to just 408 at this point, because they're two different things. You got a roof and glasses, and I don't think that needs to be put together.
I think when our, was it PHMC representative, was it Frank Grumbrine?
Frank, yes.
Yeah, was here. I'm pretty sure when he said, you take each structure as each structure is individually significant. It doesn't matter if it's a 1950s or an 1850s, they all have a significance. So you can't say, well, this one's a little more significant than that one. They're all within your historic district, they all have value, and to not kind of pick and choose like that is what I think essentially he said the last time we were here.
Call for the motion.
I'm not sure we know what it is, Doug. What I'm saying is I don't think we know what we're voting on. Okay. Before Randy's comment, which confused it even more. All right.
I think
we're
Barbie
voting on
said she wanted to
Joanne.
say something.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Gina, question for you that you may not know the answer to. So if we say we agree with HARB, how does that follow up as far as timelines for the homeowners?
I don't have an exact answer, but
Okay.
I certainly, if there was if homeowners needed to replace materials, there would be, I would work with homeowners on a acceptable timeline. I can't put a specific time stamp on that, but I certainly, as the administrator, would work with the homeowners on that.
Okay, thanks for that. This is very difficult, but I start to question why we have HARB if when this does come up, then we decide that it's okay, because HARB is, from what I've seen, done their due diligence and what we've asked them to do. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, HARB's not gonna approve these projects. They're not historically appropriate, but it's, and so, but they are a recommending body, and they are doing their due diligence for the historic district. These are national standards. We have a beautiful historic district in our town, and they're doing what they can as an advisory body to advise council on how to move forward with projects like this. And these two certainly are very challenging and difficult projects to discuss and decide upon. So HARB knows that. They know that you all are going to be having difficult conversations.
Right, it is very difficult, but you're correct. We have a beautiful historic district, and as much as we can, we would really like to maintain that. And HARB's very helpful with doing that.
Call from Mr. Johnson for a vote for the corrected motion that's on the table. Is that correct?
We're voting on the amended motion. A yes vote means you support the roof and the windows remaining as they are, with the caveat if they're replaced again, they have to comply to the HARB recommendations. My other, not to get off track, but my other comment is, Solar Shield's been putting metal roofs in the historic district for years, and they know better. So that one really bugs me.
So maybe to make this easy, we can divide the question, we vote on one of them each at a time so that you can make your decision.
Yep, he called for a vote. Mr. Alderman, let's have a vote on the amended motion that was given.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Miss Cleaton?
Yes.
Miss Dan?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Miss McKean?
Yes.
Miss Purnell?
Yes.
Miss Sedgwick?
Yes.
Miss Tosti Vasey?
Yes.
You get to keep your windows. That's what that means. It took a long time. I'm sorry for that. As Borough Council President, I'm sure it wasn't confusing to you guys, but it was to me. But you get to keep your windows.
So that just now means that Gina needs to do a little bit of
Next.
extra work to get that into the deed.
Current and old business, we're moving on. No, we did them both. We did them both. We're moving on. Current and old business. I know, Randy. I was here. I was 3 people down from you, buddy. Approval of the ordinance. Do you have that in front of you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I'll just read here on old business, ordinance number 0205-2024-01, authorizing Logan Fire Company and the Undyne Fire Company to remit invoices to insurance carriers for services rendered. Looking for the motion, the second.
I'll make the motion, Mr. President. You want second?
I have a question. Did we already do this? Okay. We already have it. So just to be clear, the last time we came up with this, that was just to advertise it, and this is to actually pass it. Is that what we're doing?
That is correct.
Okay,
Advertised
thank
was
you.
previously approved.
Other discussion? Okay.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Miss Cleaton?
Yes.
Miss Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Miss McKean?
Yes.
Miss Purnell?
Yes.
Miss Sedgwick?
Yes.
Miss Tosti Vasey?
Yes.
Thank you. The next is the South Spring Street Streetscape Phase 2 update. A motion and a second to remove from the project a portion of the sidewalk on High Street in front of the Decker building.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it, Cleaton.
Thank you. Discussion? Comments?
Where is the Decker building?
Let me clarify. What we're asking to remove is the 100 feet in front of, on West Bishop Street, in front of rural water and the dentistry. That would be the first priority. Then if you wanted to ensure that we were going to come in on the bid based on the estimate, the Decker building is the big white building on High Street in Spring.
So this would be the south side of Bishop Street?
Yeah, but I'm only asking for West Bishop Street to remove that portion of sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Now I'm confused. West Bishop Street doesn't intersect High Street, so what part of the sidewalk are you doing? Both of them, or are you just doing?
West Bishop, the streetscape project does the portion of West Bishop in front of Smokers Express.
Right.
And then turns on South Spring all the way down to High. Okay? So the way the memo was written is that I was giving you a couple options. One is to remove just the portion of West Bishop, and the other was to take a portion of the South Spring that was closest from High Street working back, which would be in front of the old Decker building.
So are we voting on just the original part, or are we voting on the second option, or are you?
My recommended option was option 2, just to remove the West Bishop Street portion and then let the bid go and see where it comes in.
Okay, but that's not what I heard the motion to be, because the motion that I heard that was seconded was the High Street portion, which is Decker. That's not what you're asking for.
No, that's not what I'm asking,
Okay.
but if that's what you decide, that's okay.
So, can we make a substitute motion to do what Don really wants to do? Which is the Bishop Street removal, not the Decker building removal.
You need a second, Joanne, if you're making a motion. To change Dawn's recommendation.
To change it to Don's recommendation.
Still need a second.
I'll second it, Purnell.
Further discussion? Comments? Dawn, you good with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll work.
Okay.
Everyone okay? Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Miss Cleaton?
Yes.
Miss Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Miss McKean?
Yes.
Miss Purnell?
Yes.
Miss Sedgwick?
Yes.
Miss Tosti-Vasey?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item is the CATA fee increase letter from December 21st, 2023. I need a motion and a second to send a response to CATA Board expressing the council's great displeasure over the fact that the borough received nearly tenfold fee increase notice after our 2024 budget was set. And that's the first one. And
So
I'll read the
moved.
second one.
Second. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Miss Cleaton?
Yes.
Miss Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Miss McKean?
Yes.
Miss Purnell?
Yes.
Miss Sedgwick?
Yes.
Miss Tosti-Vasey?
Yes.
Second part of this item is a motion and a second to contact, set up meetings with officials from the federal, state, county government, other service providers to seek assistance in solving the human services needs voiced at our January 29th CATA hearing, funding and alternative public transportation systems. I'll need a
So
motion.
moved.
Second.
Okay. Nothing else?
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Miss Cleaton?
Yes.
Miss Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Miss McKean?
Yes.
Miss Purnell?
Yes.
Miss Sedgwick?
Yes.
Miss Tosti-Vasey?
Yes.
Thank you. Believe it or not, we're to new business. Request for a veterans parking only
No.
sign.
Nope.
What? I forget something? Oh. Geez, more CATA letters? Okay, CATA fee increase letter. CATA has indicated that the borough has until June 30th to notify them about services levels for their fiscal year '24. I need a motion and a second to notify CATA that Bellefonte Borough intends to use CATA services up to the budgeted amount for calendar year 2024 unless federal, state, and county or other resources become available, making the increased services possible. Bellefonte Borough will notify CATA before June 30th regarding service levels after December 31st, 2024.
I'll make that motion, Clayton.
I'll second it. Dan?
Thank you.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Miss Cleaton?
Yes.
Miss Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Miss McKean?
Yes.
Miss Purnell?
Yes.
Miss Sedgwick?
Yes.
Miss Tosti-Vasey?
Yes.
New business. A request for a veteran parking only sign created for a parking space near the courthouse. A motion and a second to approve this.
I'll make that motion, Johnson.
I'll second it. Dan?
If no discussion,
I have several questions. I don't have a problem with this, but I don't see in this the details of how this will work. That's my questions. First, where is the space supposed to be?
We're going to let that up to borough staff, and the police chief, I think, is what a discussion I had with,
And the
sort of
mayor.
with the mayor, and in his note, He said that he would work together with borough staff and the chief to designate the spot.
Okay, is this one space or more than one space? Just one space, okay. Is the third question, is this a free space for veterans, or is this just a space that veterans can park in, they pay the regular parking fee?
I didn't hear that. What was the concern?
Is this a free space for veterans? Or is it just a space that veterans can park in, but they have to pay the regular parking fee?
I believe there are certain logistical issues that go along with this, but I believe the intent was that those who served our country would be very deserving of a free parking space within our borough.
It's going to be a free space. If you're a veteran and you use the space, that's what it's there for. If you're not, you should be ashamed of yourself. So we have to let some people and their honesty take advantage of the space. So
okay.
I can't. You go to Lowe's, you go to Home Depot. There are spaces reserved for veterans. I'm a veteran. I don't use it, but I understand why it's there. So you have to let some of these things self-police themselves. And I think in this case, it should be done. We have free motorcycle parking with no fees. And we're asking for one space for veterans.
Okay.
And I think if any of us see people abusing that, we'll let somebody know.
And I don't think we need a further editorial on this. As I look for future initiatives as mayor of this community, this is something that's come up on a couple different occasions, and how they think it would be very honorable to have a reserved veterans only space. And I want to thank Julie and Chief Weaver for working with me on this, and for everybody for approving it to honor those who serve our country courageously.
So just one other related question. I don't know how we would tell if it's a veteran or not, and that's what you were just addressing, Doug, that people have to be honest. The question is that does this also include family members, sort of like a veteran's family benefit, or is it just for the veteran?
I believe just for the veteran, Mayor.
Yes.
Just like
Veterans and their families. Yeah. If
So I've just not heard
my
two
wife
different-
wants to use it, she can use it. I think that's a no-brainer.
other discussion?
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Reluctantly, no, because we don't know how this will actually be enforced, and I would like to be able to give it to the veterans, but they may be harmed by some people just being jerks.
Thank you. Motion pass. Get your sign, Mayor. Thank you. You're welcome. J.C. Orr and Son Incorporated Certificate for Payment Number 6 for the Armory Property Project. I need a motion and a second to remit
So
payment.
moved, Brackbill.
Second, Dan.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, we'll vote on it.
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
Proposed 2024 street paving list from the Superintendent of Public Works. A motion and a second to approve the street paving list with modifications to be made based on the budget.
So moved. Dan.
Seconded, Cleaton.
Thank you.
Question?
Question?
Yes. This isn't on the list, but is the 600 block of Scenic Street a borough road, or is it considered to be private property? There is a huge number of potholes on that 600 block, and it hasn't been taken care of in years, and I've driven down that area several times. If it's a private road, fine, but if it is a borough road, I think we need to consider taking care of it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the list that was provided to us. You have any other comments?
No, I think if you can find out if it is a private road or a public, if it is ours, and if so, how we can get it fixed, because some of those holes are like this deep.
Noted.
Thank you.
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti-Vasey.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Alderman. Bellefonte area, draft ordinance, amendments to Chapter 35, Fire Department. A motion and a second to advertise a drafted ordinance and amendments to Chapter 35, Fire Department.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti-Vasey.
Yes.
Okay, the next one is the Bellefonte Area School District Elementary School Land Development Plan, legal agreement between Bellefonte Area School District and the Bellefonte Borough regarding conditional use approval in place of having a complete plan related to proposed BASD Elementary School along Airport Road. A motion and a second to send the draft legal agreement to the Bellefonte solicitor for review and opinion
So
with
moved.
the application.
Sorry. So moved.
Thank you, Barbara.
I'll second McKean.
Thank you. Shauna?
Is that McKean
Any other discussion? Comments from council? Okay.
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti-Vasey.
Yes.
Don't let me miss one here. Next one is Bellefonte Borough Letter of Support for the Benner Pike Corridor for future planning funds and TIP consideration. A motion and a second to send a letter of support to the CCMPO.
I'll make that motion, Cleaton.
Thank you, Deborah.
Second, Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any discussion?
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti-Vasey.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Holderman. With that, I'll need a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Brockville.
Second.
Thank you.
Did we do the Bellefonte?
The Center Region Active Adult Center is a vibrant, inclusive, and happening location designed for active adults, 55 years and over, to be social and participate in new experiences while also staying close to home. We promote healthy aging through our many activities and health forums, as well as lifelong learning through classes and social interaction that suit almost any lifestyle. Whether you prefer line dancing followed by a walk, or a game of bridge and a meal, the center is sure to have something for you. Visit crpr.org for more info.
Are you looking for an affordable home located near school, work, and fun? Are you downsizing or leaving the area and looking to sell your home? Reach out to the State College Community Land Trust today. We have been buying, rehabbing, and selling permanently affordable homes in the State College Borough since 1996. We keep land in trust and homes within reach always, so that income qualified individuals, families, and their pets can find their forever homes.